Hey everyone, Johnny Hill here. Welcome back to the channel. I want to thank everyone who have kind of stuck with this channel over the last like 6 or so months since I put out a video. I appreciate all of you for the support that I continue to get and just for hanging in there. This is a video that I've kind of had in mind since the iPad got updated with the M1 processor. So I was looking through my videos, and in December of 2019, I put out a video about the iPad Pro and using it in my workflow as a photographer. Now, over the last 2 years, we have seen some incredible changes to the iPad Pro lineup. Better screens, just overall performance has improved drastically because of the M1 processor, which they've put in the current offerings with the iPad Pro. Now, my kind of issue with the iPad, it's a love-hate relationship for me. It's a fantastic machine, but it's limited by the iPad OS. Essentially, it's the same processor that they have in their M1 MacBook Pros and MacBook Airs, but it's that operating system that really prevents these from stretching their legs and being able to be used to their maximum performance. However, if you are an iPad user like myself, you cannot go wrong with upgrading to the M1 processor. You still get an incredible increase in performance over the previous generation A processor, whatever it was. And there have been some major updates to Lightroom CC and Photoshop on the iPad to kind of utilize this processing power that the M1 processor offers. So I mentioned a video that I had done 2 years ago. The link is down below. I recommend checking that out and just kind of seeing what my initial thoughts were. I had a view of it, and it was really interesting to see how some things have stayed the same with my use of the iPad and how a lot of things have changed. So if you want to check that one out, the link is down below, but let's get right onto this kind of how I use the iPad Pro in my workflow now. So I have my main machine where I import all of my photos. And I have backup hard drives so that I don't lose photographs and things like that. And I do all of my video editing on my main computer at home. What I use my iPad Pro for, now I have the 2021 12.9 inch M1 iPad Pro. Now what I use this for is when I'm out on a trip, out in the middle of nowhere, I take this with me because my main setup right now is a desktop, and that will be changing soon. But even if I had a laptop, I would most likely take just my iPad with me unless it was a long trip. For example, I'll be going to England at the end of the year, and I will take my replacement to this computer, which is a laptop. I will be taking that with me as well as the iPad. But if it's just like a weekend trip or just like half a week, I would just take my iPad. Now, the reason why I take it with me is because I love to edit, and more importantly, I like to make sure that my photos are coming out how I expected to when I composed them and made the photograph. So, paint a scene real quick. I'm out at a location to create some landscape photos, and say it's sunset, and I've taken the photographs, and when it's kind of wind down time, I'll import just a few onto my iPad Pro and just kind of go over and make sure that everything is a-okay, pretty much. Make sure there are no issues with the photographs, I've got no dust spots, knowing that I don't need to clean my sensor or my lens or anything like that. And then it allows me to kind of edit in a relaxed setting if I wanted to whilst I'm out on a trip or something like that. But then the majority of the use of this is I will import my photos to my computer, and then, if I just kind of want to relax upstairs with my wife and my son, then I always sync my photographs to the Adobe Cloud, and then I'll just open up Lightroom on my iPad, and then I have all of those synced photographs, and that's kind of after the culling process and picking and choosing the best compositions and things like that. So I have folders like Capitol Reef, Canyonlands, and I will organize them, and then they just sync to the cloud, and that way I have a copy and I can essentially do all my edits on my iPad Pro. And then when it comes to like fully finalizing them, let's say it's going onto my print store or it's client work, I can go back to my computer at a later date and really kind of fine tune that image. But being able to have access to it on my iPad, I can do kind of edits on the fly, just kind of get a feel of the image to see if I need to recompose it and go back to the drawing board and reshoot it or something like that. So the most important thing, because you could say, well, just grab your laptop and then go edit upstairs. And that's true, but for me personally, I absolutely love being able to do local adjustments with the pencil. So now I'm gonna show you how I would edit a landscape photo and really show you the changes they've implemented to Lightroom CC and how you can get the most out of it. Now this is where the M1 processor is really going to shine, because you will notice, one, the iPad will get a lot warmer without the M1 processor, and it will just be a bit slower as well, because we're delving into some luminosity masks, layers, and things like that. This is Lightroom that we have never seen before. So I'm just going to do some basic adjustments first. Now I am rushing. I would obviously spend a bit more time. So let me just fix the horizon line real quick. Okay, so we have a basic adjustment applied to this photograph. Now I want to bring down the brightness of the sky ever so slightly, because it obviously got increased when I was doing the global adjustment, but I don't want to bring the highlights down because I want to leave, you know, detail in the water and also the mountains. So usually when you hit the brush on the old Lightroom CC, you would just have the brush, linear gradient, and radial gradient. Now you have select subject, sky, color range, and luminance range, and depth range. Now these are very intuitive algorithms to select certain parts of your image. So if we hit select sky, it will detect the sky in the photograph, create a mask, and then we can immediately make some changes to just that area. So if I wanted to bring down the sky ever so slightly, but increase the saturation as well, maybe change the hue if I wanted to, which obviously I wouldn't because that's crazy, but it does it just like that. You don't have to brush or mess around with that at all, which is amazing. Particularly because I would use a linear gradient for this kind of situation, and obviously you would have some clipping on the mountains, but this just glues right to it, which is amazing. And then I will just, to finish off this photograph, I'll grab my pencil and just fix the brush a little bit, and I will brush just over these reeds just to kind of create some depth. You know, if you're using Lightroom, this would be called dodging and burning, essentially. If you're using Photoshop, this would essentially be called dodging and burning. Just going to bring it across the horizon as well on those trees, and then just bring the exposure up ever so slightly. So obviously we have some kind of, it didn't quite apply how I wanted it to on the foreground, so I'm going to go back and do it again. I'm going to bring the flow down quite significantly. And that way I can just paint in, and it's going to be a bit more fluid. If we wanted to take it one step further, I also have Photoshop on this iPad. Now, I like to do a slight autumn blur or autumn glow on my photographs, just depending on what the scene is. In this photograph, I think it would look really nicely on. So if I go up to the top right and then hit edit in Photoshop, it will bring it into Photoshop as a PSD. Now what I would do here, just as you do on like a main desktop or laptop, you duplicate the layer, add a Gaussian blur, have it roughly what the megapixel of your camera is. This was with the R5, so it was about 45 megapixels. And then we'll do some adjustments to the blurred layer levels. Really crunch those down. And then go back to the blurred layer, bring the opacity all the way down. Blend mode, we will do screen. And then adjust the opacity as you see fit. Now, I like about 15%, but the levels do need tweaking a little bit. And then once you're happy with the adjustments that you made in Photoshop, hit send it back to Lightroom. And it'll bring that PSD back to Lightroom. And then you have a final essential TIFF image. and that is your final result essentially. All right, everyone, so that's pretty much it for how I use the iPad Pro in my workflow. It's probably my favorite way to edit. If this had the same power as like a laptop, then this is all I would use, because I just love like the kind of hands-on, having it real close, getting a real good look into it, and being able to edit with the pencil. Now, like I said, this has come an incredibly long way, and I reckon we're in for an insane next year or so for the changes that we'll see with the iPad Pro. It's really hard to figure out what Apple is planning to do with their iPads, because those lines of difference are getting rather blurred these days. But the iPad Pro definitely stands above the rest, and that M1 processor has so much potential. So if we see changes to iPad OS in the next year or two, this will definitely be a strong contender to replacing laptops. Now, I might put my foot in my mouth because Apple has put out some insane MacBook Pros this last week, but this is just, it's such a powerful machine, and it's a great addition to my daily workflow, and I highly recommend using an iPad, whether it's the Pro or whatever it may be, just something that is up to date to handle these incredible changes that we've seen to Lightroom CC and Photoshop. All right, everyone, we've got a little Kingsley cameo here. So I messed up, my memory card was full. In fact, both of my memory cards were full when I was recording last night, and I didn't realize it cut off right at the end. So I just wanted to thank everyone for tuning in. If you have any questions about the iPad Pro and how I use it in my workflow, maybe something I didn't cover in this video, don't hesitate to message me either on YouTube or Instagram. Feel free to leave a comment down below. Next week, I have a very special video coming. It's something that I've been working on over the last couple of weeks. So I'm super excited to release that one. So definitely hit the bell notification if you'd like to stay up to date with video releases. And until next time, I'll see you later. Say bye. Say bye. Thanks, everyone.